You know what I remember most? It wasn't the bombs. Not the fire. Not the flash. It wasn't the end of the world. It was coffee. That first sip in the morning. The steam rising from the mug. The smell filling the kitchen. I used to drink it too hot, scald my tongue, curse under my breath while my wife laughed at me. God, I'd give anything to burn my tongue again. Pause. Back then, I was just a man, a husband, a father, a soldier who thought war meant desert boots and sandstorms overseas, not the sky itself catching fire. I had a little apartment on the east side of town. 2 bedrooms, cracked tiles in the bathroom, neighbors who argued too loud through thin walls. On rainy mornings, I'd open a window just enough to let in the cool air and I'd listen. Buses wheezing past, kids running late for school, someone's music bleeding out of a car radio. The city was alive, full of petty sounds, but alive. The little things. That's what sticks. The smell of laundry fresh from the dryer. The feel of a clean shirt against your skin. The taste of strawberries in early summer. So sweet they almost stung. The rhythm of footsteps on a crowded sidewalk. Everyone in a hurry. Everyone believing tomorrow would come. I believed it too. I wore the uniform. But I never thought it would mean fighting on our own soil. We all thought the missiles were nightmares from another age. History class warnings, not a future we'd inherit. And then long silence. The sirens. You don't forget that sound. It wasn't like the drills we used to run. This was raw, desperate. A howl that clawed at your chest. That made every animal instinct scream run. I remember standing at the window, mug in my hand, watching people pour out into the street. Eyes wild, like ants when the dirt collapses on their hill. I thought of my wife, my boy. I thought of everything I hadn't said. And then the sky lit up. That was the day the world ended. I was infantry, boots on the ground. That's what they needed after the exchange. Men hold lines that didn't really exist anymore. Men to dig trenches in ground poisoned by ash. My first deployment after the strikes wasn't some foreign desert. It was to what used to be a city I'd driven through 100 times on weekend trips. I didn't recognize it. Not really. The blast had carved it open, turned glass towers into jagged skeletons. The streets were coated in dust, so thick it muffled your footsteps. No birds, no dog barking, no engines, just silence, except for the crunch of our boots and the creak of our gear. The silence was worse than the explosions. It was unnatural, like the world had been muted. My job was simple. Patrol, secure supply routes, check for survivors. We didn't find many. When we did, they were burned or blind or coughing blood from lungs already ruined. Some begged for water. Others just begged us to shoot them. Pause. You want one memory? One that never leaves me? We were ordered into the ruins of a hospital. Someone thought maybe there were supplies left, maybe fuel for generators. The place was blackened, half collapsed, but the basement held. We pried open the doors and the smell hit first. Rot, mold, blood dried into the walls. And then we heard them. Children, not many, a handful, locked in a storage room. Their parents must have shoved them in there before the fire took the building. They survived the blast, survived the collapse. But they didn't survive us, because we didn't have food. We didn't have medicine. Command told us to move on. We can't save everyone, they said. So we left them. I still hear their screams when we closed that door. I still see their faces through the crack as we walked away. That was the war. Not battles, not victories, just choices. Ugly, endless choices. Another time, we were escorting a convoy through the edge of the fallout zone. Everything was gray. The trees, the dirt, the sky. Ash rained down so steady it felt like snow. And in the distance, we saw it. A city turned to glass. A whole skyline melted into twisted, shining stone. Windows fused together. Steel warped into strange shapes like the bones of giants. Beautiful in a way. Horrifying in every other. One of my men, Rodriguez, he just stopped walking, stared at it. He said that was my home. And then he sat down in the road and wouldn't get up. We begged him, pulled at his arms. But he just kept staring at that shining graveyard. He pulled off his helmet, let the ash stick to his hair. "What's the point?" he asked. I didn't have an answer. A week later, Rodriguez was dead. Not from bullets, not from bombs, just from giving up. That's how it went for so many. Not killed, but hollowed out. And me? I kept moving, one boot after the other, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant breaking. Pause. The hardest part wasn't the missions. It wasn't the hunger or the sickness, or even the dead. It was remembering what came before. Because every time I lay down on cold concrete, I remembered my bed. Every time I choked down powder rations, I remembered warm bread and butter. Every time I smelled burning plastic, I remembered the apples in my wife's hair. Memory was the real enemy. It tore you apart from the inside. Years now, I don't know how many, the clock stopped matching when the skies stayed gray. We live in pockets. Settlements, camps, holes in the ground. Survival looks like canned food with labels worn off, like water filtered through rags, like skin burned raw if you stay outside too long. The air tastes like rust and ash. Always. Even when you think you've gotten used to it, you take a breath too deep and it cuts your throat. The world doesn't have seasons anymore. Just dusk. An endless dusk. The sun tries to break through the veil sometimes, bleeding red to the haze, but it never really wins. Kids born after the war, they don't understand what sunlight was. They think flashlights are stars. They think gray skies are normal. I don't correct them. Maybe it's better that way. Sometimes I sit by what used to be a river. It's just a trickle now, black and sluggish, with a film that glistens in sick colors. I close my eyes and try to hear the water as it was. The rush, the laughter people on its banks, the splash of oars. I can almost hear it, if I try hard enough. Almost. Pause. People ask me why I tell this story. Why I dig up these ghosts when silence would be easier. It's because I don't want memory to die with me. Because once we had a world. A beautiful, fragile, infuriating, miraculous world. And we burned it. We burned it because we thought we'd always have another tomorrow. I want whoever's left to know what was lost. Not the big things, the countries, the monuments, the armies. No, the little things. The smell of coffee. The sound of rain. The feel of sunlight on your face. That's what made life worth living. That's what we traded for ashes. Long silence. Sometimes I dream. I dream of one last sunrise. The kind where the light is gold and soft, where it warms your skin and blinds you if you stare too long. The kind that makes the world glow, even the broken parts. I don't know if I'll ever see it again. Maybe no one will. But I hold in my head, in my heart, the last sunrise I remember. And if you're hearing this, if the world somehow finds its way back from the brink, don't forget it. Don't forget how easily it can all be taken. Because when everything else is gone, memory is what's left of us. And memory is all I have.